I'm back. It's I have another setting. Uh, late at night once again. It's like 3 a.m. and can't sleep without reading. So let's go. Genetic engineering. That's what they're involved with at Banodyne. Tinkering with bacteria and views and virus to make new bugs that do good deeds like manufacture insulin or eat oil slicks. And they tinker with the genes of plants as well, I guess, to produce corn that grows in acidic soil or wheat that thrives with half the usual water. We always think of gene tinkering as being done on a small scale, plants and germs, but they could screw around with an animal's genes so it produce bizarre offspring. Wait. We always think of gene tinkering as being done on a small scale, plants and germs, but could they screw around with an animal's genes so it produce bizarre offspring, a whole new species? Is that what they've done? And is that what's escaped from Banadine? Lamb shook his head expiratedly. Expiratedly. Walt, I'm not an expert on recombinant DNA, but I don't think the science is nearly sophisticated enough to work with any degree of confidence on that sort of thing. And what could be the point anyway? Okay, just supposing they could make a weird new animal by fiddling with the genetic structure of an existing species. What use would there be for it? What use would there be? What use would there be for it? I mean, aside from exhibition in a carnival freak show, aside from exhibition in a carnival freak show, Walt's eyes narrowed. I don't know. You tell me. Listen, research money is always damn tight, but and there's fierce competition for every major and minor grant. So no one's going to be able to afford to experiment with something that has no use. Get me? Nah, because I'm involved here, you know this has to be a matter of national defense, which would mean Banadine was squandering Pentagon money, Pentagon money to make a carnivore freak. The words squander and Pentagon have sometimes been used in the same sentence. Walt said dryly. Be real, Walt. It's one thing for the Pentagon to let some of its contractors waste money in the production of a needed weapon system, but it's altogether another thing for them to knowingly hand out funds for experiments with no defense potential. The system is sometimes inefficient, sometimes even corrupt, but it's never outright stupid. Anyway, I'll say I'll say it one more time. This entire conversation is pointless because this has nothing to do with Benadon. Walt stared in at him for a long moment, then sighed. Jesus, Lamb, you're good. I know you got to be lying to me, but I half think you're telling the truth. I am telling the truth. You're good. So tell me, what about Weatherby, Yarbek, and the others? Got their killer yet? No. In fact, the men Lamb had put in charge of the case had reported that it appeared as if the Soviets had used the killer outside of their own agency and perhaps outside of the political world entirely. Oh, okay, this is Vince. The investigation seemed stymied, stymied, but all he said to Walt was, no. Walt started to straighten up and close the car door, then leaned down and in again. One more thing. You notice it seems to have a meaningful opportunity. You notice it seems to have a meaningful destination. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It's been moving steadily north or northwest or northwest ever since it broke out of Benadine, Walt said. It didn't break out of Benadine, damn it. From Benadine to Holy Canyon. From there to Irving Park. To Irving Park. And from there to the Keishan house tonight. Steadily north or northwest. I suppose you know what that might mean, where it might be headed. But of course, I daren't ask you about it, or you have me strained, or you heave me straight into prison and let me rot there. I didn't know the word daren't. What is that word again? Oh my gosh. Yeah, daren't. I didn't know that was a word. Dare. Of course, I dare not. I daren't. Dare not. Oh, I like the way that they mix the words together. Daren't. I'm telling you the truth about Benadine. So you say. You're impossible, Walt. So you say. So everyone says. Now, will you let me go home? I'm beat. Smiling, Walt closed the door at last. Lamb drove out of the hospital garage to Main Street, then to the freeway, heading home toward Placetania. What the heck? Placenicia. He hoped to make it back into bed though later than dawn. As he piloted the NSA sedan through streets as empty as mid-ocean sea lanes, he thought about the outsider heading northward. He noticed the same thing himself, and he was convinced that he knew what he was seeking, even if he did not know where precisely it was going. From the first, the dog and the outsider had possessed a special awareness of each other, an uncanny instinctual awareness of each other's moods and activities, even when they were not in the same room. The outside, I'm guessing the outsider is the unknown beast. Davis Weatherby has suggested, more than half seriously, that there was something telepathic about the relationship of those two creatures. Now, the outsider was very likely still in tune with the dog and, by some sixth sense, was following it. For the dog's sake, Lem hoped to God that was not the case. Oh, so the unknown beast has the same brain as Einstein? So, okay, yeah, I know being following Einstein. It had been evident in the lab that the dog had always feared the outsider, and with good reason. The two were yin and yang of the Francis Project, the success and the failure, the good and the bad. As wonderful, right, and good as the dog was, well, the outsider was every bit as hideous, wrong, and evil. Oh, so this is the opposite of Einstein. And the researchers had seen that the outsider did not fear the dog, but hated it with the passion that no one had been able to understand. So the outsider, I'm, get, I'm guessing the unknown beast, want to come for Einstein. That's crazy. Now that both were free, the outsider might single-mindedly pursue the dog, for it never wanted anything more than to tear the retriever limb from limb. Lamb realized that, in his anxiety, he had put his foot down too hard on the accelerator. The car was rocketing along the freeway. He eased back on the pedal. Wherever the dog was, and whoever it had found shelter, it was in jeopardy. And those who had given it shelter were also in grave danger. Yo, this book is really interesting. 6. Through the last week of May and the first week of June, Nora and Travis and Einstein were together nearly every day. Initially, she had worried that Travis was somehow dangerous, not as dangerous as Art Stretch, but still to be feared. However, she soon got through that spell of paranoia. Now, she laughed at herself when she remembered how wary of him she had been. He was sweet and kind, precisely the sort of man who, according to her Aunt Violet, did not exist anywhere in the world. Once, uh, once Nora's paranoia had been overcome, she'd then been convinced that the only reason Travis continued to see her was because he pitied her. Being the compassionate man he was, he would not be able to turn his back on anyone in desperate need or trouble. Most people meeting Nora would not think of her as desperate, perhaps strange and shy and pathetic, but not desperate. Yet, she was or had been desperately unable to cope with the world beyond her own four walls, desperately afraid of the future, and desperately lonely. Travis, being every bit as perspective as he was kind, saw her desperation and responded to it. Gradually, as May faded into June and the days grew hotter under the summer sun, she dared to consider the possibility that he was helping her not because he pitied her, he pitied, he pitied her, but because he really liked her. But she couldn't understand what a man like him would see in a woman like her. She seemed to have nothing whatsoever to offer. Alright, yes, she had a self-image problem. Maybe she was not really as hopelessly drab and dull as she felt. Still, Travis clearly deserved and could surely have better female companionship than she could provide. She decided not to question his interest. The thing to do was just relax and enjoy it, because Travis had sold his real estate business after the death of his wife and was essentially retired, and because Nora had no job either, they were free to be together most of the day if they wanted, and they were. They went to galleries, haunted bookstores, took long walks, went on longer drives into the picturesque Santa Ynez Valley or up along the gorgeous Pacific coast. Twice, they set out early in the morning for Los Angeles and spent a long day there. And Nora was as overwhelmed by the sheer size of the city as she was by the activities they pursued. A movie studio tour, a visit to the zoo, and the main tea and a matinee performance of a hit musical. One day, Travis talked her into having her hair cut and styled. He took her to a beauty parlor that his late wife had frequented. And Nora was so nervous that she stuttered when she spoke to the beautician, 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 a perky blonde named Melanie. Violet always cut Nora's hair at home, and after Violet's death, Nora cut it herself. Being tended by a beautician was a new experience, as unnerving as eating in a restaurant for the first time. Melanie did something she called feathering, and cut off a lot of Nora's hair while somehow still leaving it full. They did not allow Nora to watch in the mirror, did not let her get a glimpse of herself until she was blown dry and combed out. Then they spun her around in the chair and confronted her with herself. And when she saw her reflection, she was stunned. "You look terrific," Travis said. "It's a total transformation," Melanie said. "Terrific," Travis said. "You've got such a pretty face, great bone structure." Melanie said. "You've got such a pretty face, great bone structure," Melanie said. "But all that straight, long hair made your features look elongated and pointy. This frames your face to its best advantage." Even Einstein seemed to like the change in her. When they left the beauty shop, the dog was waiting for them where they had left him, tethered to a parking meter. He did a canine double take when he saw Nora, jumped up with his front paws on her and sniffed her face and hair, whining happily and wagging his tail. She hated the new look. When they had turned her to the mirror, she seen a pathetic old maid trying to pass for a pretty vivacious vivacious young thing. Oh my gosh. Nora. And she's still recovering. Damn, her self-worth is... She has no self-esteem at all. She's so negative to herself. I mean, can you blame her when you've been living with a family member that's been filling you with negative thoughts all your life, and now when she dies, you're now on your own trying to figure out life by yourself, and also trying to build up your self-worth, and it's not easy because all your life you've been getting told you're ugly, you're not, you'll never find anybody to love you, you're weak, that stuff. Words hurt, and this is what Nora's going through, so you can't really blame her. The style of hair was simply not her. It only emphasized that she was basically a plain, drab woman. She would never be sexy, charming, witty, or any of the other things that the new hairstyle tried to say she was. It was rather like fastening a brightly colored feather duster to the back end of a turkey and attempting to pass it off as a peacock. Because she did not want to hurt Travis' feelings, she pretended to like what she had been done to her. But that night, she washed her hair and brushed it dry, pulling on it until all the so-called style had been tugged from it. Because of the feathering, it did not hang as straight and lank as it had previously. But she did the best with it that she could. The next day, when Travis picked her up for lunch, it was clearly startled to find that she had reverted to her previous look. However, he said nothing about it, asking questions. She was so embarrassed and afraid of having hurt his feelings that for the first couple of hours, she was not able to meet his eyes for more than a second or two at a time. In spite of her repeated and increasingly vigorous the murals. Travis insisted on taking her shopping for a new dress, a bright and summery frock that she could wear to dinner at Talk of the Town, a dressy restaurant on West Gitteras, where he said you could sometimes see some of the movie stars who lived in the area, members of a film colony second only to that in Beverly Hills, Bel Air. They went to an expensive store where she tried on a score of dresses, modeling each for Travis's reaction, blushing and mortified. The sales the saleswoman seemed genuinely approving of the way everything looked on Nora. I mean, Nora's beautiful. I mean, with the description that I've been reading about her, she's like the most pretty thing, but like she doesn't see that. Like she has no self esteem, no self worth. She doesn't really see herself as anything. She just sees herself in a negative image. You know, it's sad. And she kept telling Nora that her figure was perfect, but Nora couldn't shake the feeling that the woman was laughing at her. The dress Travis liked best was from the Diane Frey's collection. Nora couldn't deny that it was lovely, predominantly red and gold, though with an almost righteous background of other colors, somehow more right in combination than they should have been, which apparently was a trait of Frey's designs. It was exceedingly feminine. On a beautiful woman, it would have been a knockout, but it just was not her. Dark colors, shapeless cuts, simple fabrics, no no ornamentation whatsoever. That was her style. She tried to tell him what was best for her, explained that she could never wear such a dress as this, but he said, "You look gorgeous in it. Really, you look gorgeous." She let him buy it. Dear God, she really did. She knew it was a big mistake, was wrong, and she would never wear it. As the dress was being wrapped, Nora wondered why she had a acquitted, and she realized that in spite of being mortified, she was flattered to have a man buying clothes for her, to have a man take an interest in her appearance. She never dreamed such a thing would happen to her, and she was overwhelmed. She couldn't stop blushing. Her heart pounded. She felt dizzy, but it was a good dizziness. Then, as they were leaving the store, she learned that he had paid $500 for the dress. $500. She had intended to hang it in the closet and look at it a lot, use it as a starting point for pleasant daydreams, which was all fine and dandy if he had cost $50. But for $500, she would have to wear it, even if it made her feel ridiculous, even if she did even if she did look like Pasor, a scrub woman pretending to be a princess. The following evening, during the 2 hours before Travis was to pick her up and escort her to Talk of the Town, she put the dress on and took it off a half dozen times. She repeatedly sorted through the contents of her closet, searching frantically for something else to wear, something more sensible. But she didn't have anything because she had never before needed clothes for a dressy restaurant. Scowling at herself in the bathroom mirror, she said, "You look like Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie." She suddenly laughed because she knew she was being too hard on herself, but she couldn't. But she couldn't go easier on herself because that was how she felt. Like a guy in drag. In this case, feelings were more important than facts, so her laughter quickly soured. She broke down and cried twice and considered calling him to cancel the date, but she wanted more than anything to see him, no matter how horribly humiliating the evening was going to be. She used Murin to get the red out of her eyes, and she tried the dress on again and took it off. When he arrived at a few minutes past 7, he looked handsome in a dark suit. Nora was wearing a shapeless blue shift with dark blue shoes. He said, Nora was wearing a shapeless blue shift with dark blue shoes. He said, I'll wait. She said, huh? For what? You know, he said, meaning, go change. The words came out in a nervous rush, and her excuse was limp. Travis, I'm sorry. This is terrible. I'm so sorry. But I spilled coffee all over the dress. I'll wait in here, he said. Walked to the living room archway. She said, a whole pot of coffee. Better hurry. Our reservation is for 7:30. Steeling herself for the amused whispers, if not outright laughter of everyone who saw her, telling herself that Travis' opinion was the only one that mattered. She changed into the Diane phrase dress. She wished she had not done the hairstyle that Melanie had given her a couple of days ago. Maybe that would help. No, it would probably just make her look more ludicrous. When she came downstairs again, Travis smiled at her and said, "You're lovely." She didn't know whether the food at Talk of the Town was as good as its reputation or not. She tasted nothing. Later, she could not clearly remember the decor of the place. Either they're the faces of other costumers, including the actor Gene Hackman, were burned into her memory she was certain that all evening they were staring at her with amazement and disdain. In the middle of dinner, evidently well aware of her discomfort, Travis put down his wine glass and leaned toward her and said quietly, "You really do look lovely, Nora, no matter what you think. And if you had the experience to be aware of such things, you'd realize that most of the men in the room are attracted to you." But she knew the truth.